All right. So the other day I decided I needed to clean my garage. And so, it was hot and it makes you fussy anyway. To have to clean your garage and then it's hot besides. And so I'm moving around kind of fast, trying to be fast. And I'm getting older. And now when I move fast, I bang my hand, I hit my arm. It's just frustrating. And so I'm reaching under something. I have the garage doors open because it's so hot, and I bang my head. And when I bang my head, I was less than Christian. I yell out just a lot of things. Okay, so I'm yelling, idiot, stupid, and other things you can't say in church. And I'm just holding my head, jumping around in the garage, going, it's so stupid. And two of my neighbors walked by, and they go, hi, Pastor. And I'm just standing there screaming, just losing it. And I'm thinking, this is great, because I have anger issues. And the reason I have anger issues is I grew up in a home where I was taught how to be angry, so it's not an excuse, it's just a part of my life. And so the message today is around anger, so Cole called me up and said, hey, Dad, why don't you talk about anger? So there's that. So how about you? What makes you angry? Okay, we'll go through a list. Just think about it. What is it that really sets you off? When someone devalues you, cuts in line, cuts you off in traffic? Is it when someone takes credit for the work that you do? And you go, I can't believe they stole that from me. Or when they take advantage of the system and, you're following the rules. Or when they just take you for granted, you're not appreciated, and you feel criticized. Or as parents, when do you get angry? When you're doing everything you can, and your kids just say, but can't you just, and it's just one more thing, and you start to lose it. So what do you do with your anger? There's a great verse in Proverbs 14:12 that says this, there is a path before each person that seems right, but it ends in death. This is about anger. What do you do when you get angry? Okay, it just feels right? And we know, a lot of us, you go, I was kind of just modeled, you got to express anger, because if you keep it inside, you'll just blow up, all right? And then other people are just taught to repress anger, and they're just going, I'm just going to stuff it down harder and harder. And they just walk around, you can hear the tick, tick, tick until. So is there another way? Is there a different way to manage anger? We are in a series on the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus' greatest sermon, and he's going to teach us a third way, a different way to manage our anger. Isn't that good? Because nobody, we don't have anger issues, just me. So it's just for me. That's why Cole made me preach this. So Matthew 5, right after Jesus, last week Cole talked about salt and light. He said, don't misunderstand why I've come. What did Jesus believe? I'll read this again, Gavin, give me the answer. Don't misunderstand why I have come. What did Jesus think? That people will. Don't misunderstand why I have come. Gavin, what's the answer? What are people going to do? There you go. See, you're a G. Thank you. Why I have come. Now, it's going to get harder. Okay, you're going to be here for me, Gavin. What specifically are they going to misunderstand about Jesus' coming to this earth? I did not come to abolish the law of Moses or the writings of the prophets. No, I came to accomplish their purpose. What's he concerned that they're going to misunderstand? Of his coming, specifically around the law, okay? He goes, it's all about the law. Good, you're doing really good with a lot of help, okay? So whatever Jesus is going to say now, it's going to be about the law, okay? So the whole context of it is you're going to misunderstand, and you're going to think that I've come. But I tell you the truth. Even heaven and earth will disappear, but not even the smallest detail of God's law will disappear until its purpose is achieved. So if you ignore even the least commandment and teach others to do the same, you will be called the least in the kingdom of heaven. But if anyone obeys the laws and teaches them, they'll be great in the kingdom of heaven. So clearly, he's going to talk about the law. When you think about God's law, you think about obedience. I got to obey it. So right away, people are going to go, yeah, I've got to obey the law. And what is Jesus most concerned about? That people will misunderstand. And when it comes to the law, that's what happens all of the time, is people simply misunderstand the law. So the law has, there's three components to the law. There's a ceremonial law, which is our relationship with God. There is civil laws, our relationship with each other. How do we love each other? And then moral laws, which really establishes how we are to live and who we're to be, and righteousness. And so Jesus says you're going to misunderstand it based on what he's going to say. So this is where we misunderstand it. Here's the big problem, because right away you're hearing it and go, okay, I'll obey, I'll obey. Look at what he says in 5:20. This is the hard one. But I warn you, unless your righteousness is better than the righteousness of the teachers of the religious law and the Pharisees, you will never enter the kingdom. Okay, so now here's how you need to hear it. Jesus is saying to you, unless you are better than the best Olympians, you're not making it. Any of you as good as any Olympian in here? Because none of you went to the Olympics, so none of you are that good. And the Pharisees were the Olympic level do-gooders, all right? They were good, and their goodness was observable. And so now Jesus says something that's shocking. So he's saying, you're going to misunderstand the law. He goes, I didn't come to destroy the law. I came to fulfill it. He goes, but as you think about your righteousness, you've got to be better than the Olympic level do-gooders that you're seeing, the Pharisees. Which right away, is that going to encourage you or discourage you? That's going to be very discouraging, because it's like, oh my gosh, I can't do that. I can't be as good as they are. And so Jesus is going to make it real clear. So now I'm just going to summarize what we need to know before we get into it, because in this whole section, this whole chapter 5, the biggest danger is to, Gavin, misunderstand the law, okay? So here's how we misunderstand the law, because this is what the Pharisees taught. God is a good God. Everybody in? And he lives in a good place. And only good people go there. That's true, okay? And so it's just how they tell you. So how are you going to be good? And the way that you be good is that you obey. And through your obedience, if you're really good, you get into heaven. So the question for the Pharisees would always be, how good is good enough? Okay, so this is just what they taught. How good is good enough? So just take one law. Remember the Sabbath day. Don't work, on the Sabbath day. Remember the Sabbath day. Keep it holy. 6 days you work, but on the seventh day, don't work. It's easy, all right? So what's your job? Don't work, okay? 6 days you work. Seventh day, don't work. There's the law. And in that way, be holy. Well, so then how good is good enough? Well, how much is work? So you got to figure out how much is work. So, can you walk on the Sabbath day? Okay, just play with me. Yes or no? You don't get it wrong. Okay, can you walk 2 blocks on the Sabbath day? Can you walk a mile on the Sabbath day? Can you walk 3 miles on the Sabbath day? At what point is walking too much? Can you carry around a hammer, if you're a carpenter on the Sabbath day? It's dangerous, because you just might see a nail and hit it, and then, you worked. And so the whole point is, we just got to figure out how good is good enough. So literally, they wrote hundreds of laws just around the idea of the Sabbath day. And literally, one of the laws, not God's law, but people's laws, Pharisees' law, was it was wrong to put a needle in your lapel, because you might then carry that around on a Sunday, and that would be carrying an instrument of work, just like somebody carrying a hammer. That's how ridiculous it was. And so they have it. So Jesus is basically coming up with a different system. So Jesus would say, God is a good God. Is that true? Yes. And he lives in a good place. Is that true? And only good people get to go there. Is that true? Yes, that's true. And the only way that you can be good is if you get Jesus's goodness in your account. You get the righteousness of Jesus. And so Jesus, because of the cross, takes his goodness, and it's like a coat that he puts over you, so you are covered in the goodness of Jesus. Because the purpose of the law, part of the law, was to show us how we failed, and we couldn't do it. I can't do it. I can't be perfect. I can't be as good as the Pharisees, because that's the thing. You got to exceed that. Well, how can I exceed these Olympic levels of do-gooders? It's not going to be by me. It's going to be by Jesus. Does that make sense? Because what's the biggest danger of this passage? You're going to misunderstand the whole purpose of the law, right? So law says, I obey God. God sees my obedience, and then he loves me and blesses me. That's legalism. That's the Pharisees. Grace says, God loves me and blesses me. I see his love and blessing, therefore I obey. Obedience is always a part of following Jesus, but it is out of the fact that I am loved. It is never trying to earn God's love. So, you got that? Jesus is afraid you're going to misunderstand the law. You have to. The only way you can exceed the righteousness of the Pharisees is if you have Jesus' goodness in your life. So now Jesus is going to explain the purpose of the law. Now, it leads us to obedience, but the danger in this is that, you can go, okay, I'm going to be really good. I'm going to start to obey. That's the trap. He says, I don't want you to misunderstand it. But now he's going to talk about murder, but he's going to, in this chapter 5, he talks about murder, adultery, marriage, vows. We'll be talking about those in future weeks. But today, we're just going to be talking about murder. And in Jesus' day, basically the Pharisees said, hey, the law says don't murder. So as long as you don't kill somebody, it's okay if you're angry at them, you can resent them, you can be cruel to them, you can hit them, you can yell at them, you can throw stuff at them. Everything is good as long as you don't. That's right. As long as you don't murder, kill, good. Okay, you're good. And so Jesus is going to explain that's not what the law said, right? Even you would know that's wrong, right? Okay, so then Jesus says this in going on Matthew 21 and 22. You have heard that your ancestors were told you must not murder. That's right. That's it. If you commit murder, you are subject to judgment. Here's the tough one. This is where all of us angry people are going to get in trouble. But I say to you, if you are even angry at someone, you are subject to judgment. If you call someone an idiot, you are in danger of being brought before the court. And if you curse someone, you are in the dangers of the fires of hell. Okay? So what Jesus here is, he talks about it and he says, you heard, as long as you don't murder. But he goes, look, at the purpose of the law was always to show you God's standards, right? Now remember, we can't good our way to heaven. We have to have Jesus' righteousness. But now he's going to say, but this is really what the law meant all along. It says, I'm saying, if you're just angry with people, which is just natural, somebody hurts us, we get angry. He's saying you get angry, and then he defines what that even looks like. What does anger look like? If you say idiot, the word's raka there, or you say fool, idiot, you're stupid, you are guilty of, it's just the same as murder. Now, the consequences are very different, but you're still breaking the law. So what does that mean? If you intend to insult one by dissing them, by disrespecting them, dishonoring them, disgracing them, disregarding them, destroying them, to do any of those diss words, that's what it means. And so all of us, we all have our way of dissing people or, hurting people. So what's your preferred way? What do you do? Some of you, should we just go through and you raise a hand when I get it? No, I won't. So, how many of you are like, you idiot? You say that to yourself or underneath your heart, you're so stupid or whatever. You don't have to raise your hand. But we all have it, and it's really personal, isn't it? Because when we're hurt, it's either going off in our head or we say it. And so Jesus calls us on it. We all have our own way. Now, why does Jesus say this is so wrong? Because anger destroys relationships. And researchers kind of have discovered this. They did a research and they watched married people when they communicated, and they found one quality that if it's a part of communication, they can predict within 90% accuracy that marriage won't make it, will not make it, it will fail to a 90% level. You want to know what the one quality is? Contempt. If you have contempt in your voice, which is that's just what anger is. That's injustice. What a fool. What an idiot. You're so stupid. That's contempt. If they can observe that attitude or behavior in a person, 90% of the time it destroys marriages, it destroys family relationships, it destroys friendships. Contempt destroys it. So Jesus has said, you can't do that. It's against God's law. And the reason it's against God's law is because it destroys relationship. And then the second thing Jesus says, which is really amazing, anger brings hell to earth. It says it brings the fire of earth. Now, how does that work? This is the way it works, because I've thought a lot about this, because I've told you, anger is my issue. I have it. So what happens in life? Stuff happens in life. And when stuff happens because people hurt me, I hurt people, or we live in a broken world and just hurt comes rolling down. And so things happen and I get hurt and you get hurt. And when you get hurt, now that's when you have the choice. We can't help but get hurt. Everyone gets hurt. But when you get hurt, the most natural thing, like Proverbs says, there's a way that seems natural. We just are, we're modeled anger, we're taught anger. The first thing that happens, we get angry, which is to judge, to isolate, to begin to destroy a relationship. And when we get angry, it doesn't just settle there, it moves on. And anger turns into bitterness and resentment. And just that seething thing. They meant to do that. They wanted to do that. They intended to hurt me. Those people, life's not fair. And so that bitterness and resentment gets spinning around in you. And then because there's bitterness and resentment, it moves to vengeance or criticism or contempt. You act out on it. It's not enough just to have the bitterness inside of you. You can't have bitterness just steaming inside you. It's got to get out. And so eventually it just flies out in some kind of action. So I'll give you an illustration of it. This is a great illustration. So my wife broke her arm 8, 9, 10 weeks ago, okay? And so we were hiking in the mountains in Utah, and some bikes came by, so she stepped up the hill, and she fell down. She broke her wrist. She broke her dominant arm, her right arm. And Lori's very proud, very strong, and very capable person. But she broke her arm, and she had a cast, I think some of you saw her, which is the whole arm and up the side. So it restricted her movement, and she couldn't do anything with her right arm. And she's competent, and she's proud of being competent, and she loves to cook, and she loves to do things. But as she's moving around and doing stuff, she can't even grab with her right hand initially. So she's trying to do stuff, so you try to open up a jar, and so she's trying to wedge it in her arm and crank it with her left arm. And, and what happens? You get, she's hurt, and so now she's frustrated, and she's confused, and she's trying to cut things in the kitchen. And so now it's going to lead to, the anger's going to bitterness and resentment, and now it's going to come out to vengeance. So she's going to call somebody a fool or an idiot. So who's she going to call an idiot? Yeah, herself inside, but she's going to shoot it out at me. And she forgets that I am a loving, sensitive husband at this moment. And so she's sitting there trying to do something. She's standing there going, and and I'm in a different room, and she goes, "Can't you see? I need a little help here. Are you not paying attention? Don't you care? I can't do this. Will you get in here and help me do this?" So I go, "Yes, I'm glad." So I come in, and so I'm opening up a jar, and she goes, "No, cut that and slice that." So I'm starting to cut vegetables, and I'm cutting up fruit. And she's going, "That's not the way you do it. Say, do it this way." And so, when you have somebody that's, kind of angry and losing it, you feel like you're playing. You ever play Jenga? Where you get the blocks, pull one out and then put it on there. And that's where it is. Like, I'm around Lori, and, you touch a block, see if it's, no, not going to touch that one. And you're trying to move this. Wait, no, you're just, because if you do it wrong, it's all coming down. And so you just have anger. And then what happens on my side, there's hell on earth, okay? Trust me, because we had a little hell on earth there. And you do it. And then what happens is, because Lori's hurt and she's frustrated, hurt people. So, now I'm cutting stuff up. And so she's angry, so she hurts me. So hurt turns into, anybody paying attention? It's right there on the stage. Hurt turns into anger. Anger turns into. So I'm sitting there, and she's telling me that I'm not cutting things right. You're not cutting that right. You're not doing that right. You're not doing that. And so I have two choices. I can tell her I'm doing it fine, or what's wrong with you, which that's not going to work. Or I can use the passive-aggressive approach, which is revenge. So what do I do if you want to be passive-aggressive? Just keep cutting it wrong, my way. And just like what? I'm sorry. Because you know what passive-aggressive is, right? It's a St. Bernard putting its 2 paws on your shoulders and kissing you in the face while it's peeing on your shoes, right? And so that's what And that's what you do. So sometimes we just shoot back, but that's not going to work. So it's like I go, oh, here, is this not right, Lori? Or how you do it? And I ask questions. But is that vengeance? Oh, yes. See, you go, oh, yeah. See, so it really does. It comes out to revenge or vengeance. And then I bring hell on earth. See how it works? All right. So Jesus says you can't be angry because it destroys relationship. And secondly, it brings hell on earth. So, what is the solution? And Jesus gives us two really powerful illustrations that are solutions, because basically the solution is this. You can't stop hurt in life, and you can't stop it sort of bumping you. But instead of choosing anger, he says, choose another emotion. Instead of just going with anger, which is the most primitive and most natural emotion, he's saying, choose a different emotion. Choose sadness. Choose empathy. Choose understanding. Choose concern. Choose care. Choose anything but anger, all right? Anything but anger. Anger just takes you down the path of bitterness and vengeance, all right? So, just as a side note, is all anger bad? No, God's angry. And so, how can God be angry? Well, how can a parent not be angry at drugs and the drug dealer who gets their child addicted to drugs? You know, there is a righteous anger of a parent. Or when a child is abused, there is a righteous anger at being at that. And so, you know, we have that sense of God's righteous anger. The danger with that, and there is, so it's not always wrong to be angry. But for me, you know, for all of us, because we're a group of, you know, Anger Anonymous here, so hi, my name's Angry, and I know you are too, is just lock onto this verse. Look at what it says in James 1:20. Human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires. There is righteous anger, but if you're saying all the time, I'm just righteously angry, I don't think so. I think you've just got a lot of human anger in there. Now, Jesus is going to give two illustrations that shows a third way. What's the third way, Gavin? Choose another emotion. What's the third way? Gavin, there you go. I know, look, come on. You said you'd be there for me. You were going to be my star student. I know, come on. Choose any emotion but anger. Good. Now you'll be angry with me at this. All right. So look at what it says in Matthew 5:23. It's on your screen. So here's two illustrations. Now this is pretty amazing. So if you are presenting a sacrifice at the altar in the temple, now he's speaking to people in northern Israel, 3-day journey from the temple. So we'll come back to this. You're in the temple and you suddenly remember that someone has something against you. Leave your sacrifice there at the altar and go and be reconciled to that person, and then come and offer your sacrifice to God. Now look at what Jesus says, because it's pretty amazing. He's saying to you, you would go, we live in Galilee, say, and he's talking in Galilee when he gives this. So he says, you know what, imagine, so when we would go to the temple, we would do that 2 times at the year, and it's a 3-day journey. So you might go for Passover when they're celebrating that God delivered his people out of the slavery of Egypt, and there would be an innocent animal that's sacrificed so the guilty can go free. It's a high holy day. It's a really big deal. So you travel for 3 days. You're ready to go and to celebrate the Passover that God delivered us out of the slavery of Egypt, which is this promise that one day God will deliver us out of the slavery of sin. And you're there, and Jesus says, and you're offering a sacrifice. You've traveled 3 days. You've prepared for all this. You've done this. And you realize that you've been angry. You've got an issue, a relational issue with someone. He says, just put it down right there. How long do you have to travel? Gavin, 3 days. You're going to be here for me. 3 days back. Get right with the person, and then come and do your religious celebration. Look at the priority that he does. Now, why does Jesus make that such a priority? Because getting right in a relationship with someone that you can see, someone that you know, is way harder than getting right with God. Because with God, you're just like, oh, hey, got a little loose in the turn, sorry, no big deal. But when you talk to somebody that you've wronged, you've got to own your part. You've got to say it. You've got to go through the painful part of, you know what, I hurt you. I was wrong. Would you forgive me? I own my part. Go through all of that, the pain of it. You see what your hurt does and the brokenness. And so Jesus is saying it's important that you go and get right, because in getting right with them, what is going to happen is then as you come back to God, you will have acted out forgiveness. You will understand my forgiveness to you. You will understand what it means to be in right relationship with me, because you did the hard, big, painful work of getting right with another person, so that when you come and make a sacrifice to me, you'll appreciate my forgiveness to you. You'll understand what it means, my love for you. And so he gives this powerful illustration of reconciling. And then he gives a second one that's a little bit harder to understand, but it is just as powerful. He says, when you're on your way to court with your adversary, okay? So if you're on your way to court, what's your mindset with your adversary? That's sort of the key to understanding this. He says, settle your differences quickly. Otherwise, your accuser may hand you over to the judge, who will hand you over to an officer. Then you'll be thrown into prison. And if that happens, you surely won't be free again until you've paid the very last penny. When you go to court with someone, what's your mindset? I am so right. They so owe me. I have got the law on my side. I am so going to get even with them. I'm going to court, and I'm going to get what's fair. What is Jesus asking people to do in this illustration? He's literally saying, just go, but what if you're wrong? What if in this thing, it's not the way you think? What if you're wrong? Because if you're wrong, you're going to be thrown in jail, and it's going to go against you. And just take that mindset. I might be wrong. And then what would you do if you were wrong? You would move with greater humility, and you would want to settle it, and you'd give up some things because you'd make the relationship more important than the issue. Does that make sense to you? So I'm going to ask you to say something. And I know sometimes when we repeat stuff in church, you go, why does he do that? I don't like that. I'm not going to do that. And I'm going to watch you, and I'm going to make you say it. And the reason is because this is something that if you just hear yourself say it, it'll be really valuable for you. Jesus wants you to think about this. This is a valuable thing. It's not just a dumb, it's actually valuable. So I want you to just say, I might be wrong. Okay, let's all say it together. I might be wrong. See, that's what Jesus is saying, going, why don't you just embrace that thought? Say it again. It'll help you. It'll drive a little deeper. I might be wrong. And just by saying that, Jesus is saying it'll really help you, because it'll help you to own your part, not stand and be so right and do that. Well, how can I do that? Because that's what Jesus did for us, what God did for us. When we were wrong and we were angry and we were rebels and we just walked away from God, God did not get angry at us, judge us, and say, to hell with all of you forever. He had compassion and care and love. And ultimately, it's expressed most profoundly in he literally came into this world to be with us, to understand us, so that we could be confident that he knows what it's like. And then he went to the cross and he paid the penalty for our sin so that we can be forgiven. And when we understand that he forgave us, when we're in a situation where we think, I am so right and they are so wrong and I'm going to so get even, Jesus says, just think in your mind. Everybody say it together. I might be wrong. Just say in your mind, I might be wrong here. And it will serve you really well to say, you know what? So what will I do, and how can I move at them towards reconciliation in that? Okay, so those are the two ones. I want to show you another passage, all right? That's just Paul saying the very same thing in just another way, and maybe it'll catch it. Look at what it says in Ephesians 4. It said, don't sin by letting anger control you. You see what the danger of that emotion? Anger is such a dangerous emotion. Destroys relationship, brings hell on earth. He says, and it's addictive. It's controlling. You don't want to just be expressing anger. It builds more anger. Don't let the sun go down while you are still angry. There's the priority of it. For anger, so, the problem with it is that, you'll go to bed angry at some point. But the point is deal with it as quickly as you can, because it's corrosive and it'll destroy your soul. And then it comes back to this idea. Anger gives a foothold to the devil. This is the verse that Lori quotes to me every time I'm angry. Every time I'm angry, I go, oh, God, I hate that. She goes, good. You just invited Satan into it right now, right? Just bring him on into our marriage. Bring him on into our house. And literally, that's what a foothold is, right? A foothold is a place. It's a step up and in. And so when you're angry, you're literally giving Satan a step up and in. How? Because anger leads to bitterness is swirl. And what does Satan do? Satan's, his whole strategy is to accuse, to destroy, and to lie. So he's just going to tell you all sorts of lies. They did that on purpose. They intended to do that. They accuse you, they're mean. He's just going to lie to you and spin bitterness in, and then when you have bitterness swirling around you, ultimately you're going to act out in contempt and in vengeance, and you're going to criticize, and you're going to bring hell on earth. He says, don't let sin control you. Don't let sun go down while you're still angry. For anger gives a foothold to the devil. Then he goes on, get rid of all bitterness, rage, anger, harsh words, slander, as well as all types of evil behavior. Instead, look at what he says. Instead of choosing anger, here's an emotion. Choose this one. Be kind to one another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, just as God, through Christ, has forgiven you. So he's saying, instead, don't choose anger, bitterness, and don't do that. He says, instead, choose kindness, understanding, care. And in choosing that, then you can move towards forgiveness. And forgiveness is the unique quality that we learn from God. Now, what is forgiveness and what is it not? Forgiveness is actually a financial term. And we understand finances. I mean, basically, if you owe, come on, you go borrow money from a bank, you owe, you pay, okay? It's simple. It's very simple financial term. You owe, you pay. If you don't pay, what will the bank do? They'll come and take your property back from you. You go borrow money, hard money from they'll bring, a knuckle drugger to come and beat you up. You'll pay, okay? So in financial terms, it's really simple. You owe, you pay. Forgiveness is a unique biblical term, and Jesus is saying, you owe, I pay. That's what forgiveness is. So we owed. We had a mountain of moral debt. We could not live according to God's standards. That's what Jesus is saying in it. You'll never measure up to God's standards. The purpose of the law is to show you what God's standards were all along. It's the way you relate with me and each other. You need to understand it, but you'll never be able to measure up. You'll always need grace. You'll need my love. So you can't measure up. You owe, you can't do it, but I'll pay. So Jesus goes to the cross and he pays our debt. So when we see Jesus dying on the cross, we see what we owe God. It's death, and it's eternal death. And so Jesus pays. That's what forgiveness is. So all forgiveness is costly. It costs Jesus something. And so when Jesus asks us to forgive, to be tenderhearted, he's understanding that he's asking us to do something costly. Someone hurt us. There's a debt. And instead of exacting the debt out of that person, they don't pay, but so you pay. You let it go. You forgive. You don't get even. You break the cycle of bitterness and vengeance. You just say, you know what? I'm not going to do that. And so it's refusing. When we refuse to give, we're refusing to act out the forgiveness that Jesus has given to us. We're saying, I'm going to let it destroy a relationship. I'm going to bring hell on earth. I'm going to be angry. That's what happens. When we forgive, we are trusting that Jesus ultimately will heal the pain, and ultimately we're making the relationship the priority. So that's what forgiveness is. What is forgiveness not? Forgiveness is not ignoring justice. Jesus, when he forgave, justice was a big part of what he did on the cross. And so it's not ignoring justice. It's not saying, you know what, I'm going to deny that there was hurt and pain. It's not a pardon. It's not letting go of consequences. God forgives us, but he doesn't remove the consequences for the things that we did. So it's not letting go of consequences. It doesn't mean that the other person gets to do whatever they want. It doesn't mean that you just like forgive and forget. There is no love without boundaries. And so, you forgive, but there has to be boundaries. You have to go, you know what, I'm not going to let you hurt me again. I'm not going to let you just do whatever you want. I'm not going to do those things. That's forgiveness is not those things. And forgiveness does not mean that you're reconciled. Reconciliation takes two people. I can own my part, but to be reconciled, you have to own your part. Forgiveness just takes one, and you're the one. Oh my gosh, that's profound. That's probably something you want to say, isn't it, Gavin? Let's just say that. And again, why do we need to say it? Because it helps us remember it. Forgiveness takes one, and I'm the one. All right, let's say it together. Forgiveness takes one, and I'm the one. Say it one more time. Forgiveness takes one, and I'm the one. That's why it says in Romans 12, it says, as far as it's possible, live at peace with all people. As far as it's possible with you. You can't live at peace with all people. But as far as it depends on you. So forgiveness is the bridge that people can walk across to create a relationship. Now in your outlines, you can see there's a story of Matthew 18. That's extra credit. You go out and read this week because it's a profound story that Jesus tells about what forgiveness really is. And so it's just another thing you can do because you're all high achievers. Well, what do I need? I want to do more. You read Matthew 18 right there. So here's my question. What are you going to do when people hurt you? What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Because life happens. You hurt people. They hurt you. Stuff happens. They bump into you and you're going to be hurt. The automatic reaction is just to get angry. And it's primitive and it's just so natural. But it destroys and brings death. When somebody you trust hurts you, when there's a business person who cheats you and they break your heart and they don't even care, a family member breaks trust, a friend betrays you, and inside, you're just thinking, they owe me. They should pay. I mean, every part of your being says, they owe, and you should pay. And God says, Jesus says, you know what? I forgave you. You were the $1 million debtor. I forgave your debt. Yeah, there's a debt there, but it's just small change. It's a few dollars. If I forgave you millions of dollars, can't you forgive somebody just $1? $2? That's basically what that story says. So what are you going to do? So here's just 3 responses that I want to challenge you with. And basically I want you to say, what is God saying to you today? Which thing do you need to do? Because we all got anger, right? We all got anger. So what are we going to do? First, you might just say, God, in my prayer, I need to go, I might be wrong. I just might be wrong. I've got this whole story built up in my mind, and you can't find a way to forgive. Maybe what you need to pray, and we're going to give you a moment to pray in a second, is you just to say, I might be wrong. I might be wrong in the way that I see this. Jesus has challenged me to think through, just to take on, can I just embrace I might be wrong? The second thing is it only takes one to forgive, and I'm the one. A lot of people sit back and go, I'm not going to do it until they say they've got to own their part. That's not what forgiveness is. There's nothing that needs to happen for you to forgive someone. Forgiveness takes one, and you're the one. And the third thing is, do you need to do something? Look at what Jesus put as a priority. He said, if you're at the temple and it's a 3-day journey back, you take the 3 days. You go back and you get right. That's how important this issue is, because if you don't, it will destroy your own soul. It will bring hell on earth. So what do you need to do? Let's pray to our Heavenly Father. Father, as you speak to us right now, who do we need to write a letter to? Who do we need to make a call to? Where in our life do we need to say, I might not have this right. I might not have this right. God, where do you want us to be the people who forgive? Speak to us, Lord.